Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom. Let's discuss about the divine design of the sympathetic nervous system. Now, this is a picture of an autonomic nervous system which includes sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Let me tell you, the prime objective of parasympathetic nervous system is to rest, digest and conserve energy for future use. And prime objective of sympathetic nervous system is to mobilize energy in case of emergency or as and when required for all the intellectual work, actions and otherwise. It is a sympathetic system which plays a very important role to make us very effective in everything. So that way sympathetic system is our asset, but provided we use it very efficiently. If you do not use the sympathetic system effectively, we could have many problems which normally center around psychosomatic disorders like increased heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, anything which can disturb centrally revolves around sympathetic system. I am going to explain that concept in this particular video. Now, can you see the same picture in this? This is the most beautiful thing of autonomic nervous system. You can see Ida, Pingala, Sushmana nadis. You can see the brain, you can see the mind, you can see the universe, you can see the inside and outside out thing. That is the most beautiful thing, part of the autonomic nervous system, and particular balance with the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Once this system is done, and that is what Tantra is all about, Tantra Vidya is all about, entire perfect anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, psychology, everything centered in this particular symbol itself. It is a summation of entire universe. No wonder the symbol of the Western medical science is seen here, Indian Tantra is seen there, and almost all the universal finally centers around in this from ancient time to present, and I find this fantastic. And this is slightly improvised version based on my experience, and I'm sure. And in this you can even see 10 centers of consciousness or 10 chakras, not 7. And you can see the reptilian brain, you can see the human brain, you can see the divine brain. You can see the entire divine, everything is in this particular symbol itself. Now we are coming to, as I've been saying, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system put together is this standard classification, which is made of 7 parts. As I've told you, one part is missing. That is what I'm going to explain in this particular picture. And in this I have said very clearly the pacemakers of the heart, uterus and digestive system, which make extension to sympathetic and parasympathetic further at a lower level to produce the neuromuscular junction as well as neuroendocrine functions to make us efficient in proficiency in homeostasis. So this is something which also I have made it clear. Without that you can't really understand. That is the extension of autonomic nervous system. So these are the 7 parts, very clear. Now we are coming to the divine consciousness is little peculiar. In this particular picture you can see this brain part. The signals can be both ways, going up and down simultaneously. Brain stem to hypothalamus to limbic system to cerebral cortex and to beyond. There's a two-way traffic, and that makes the human brain very unique, and this is where I have been able to tap it and bring Divyank and other things to the universe because of aptic utilization of the 100 billion neuron cells into 20,000 memory synapses, have a fantastic brain fully utilized efficiently as a walking talking encyclopedia. But when come to the spinal cord below the brain stem, this is the internalized one side signal only, either from sensory component to the middle and middle to the motor and in between autonomic. But that is a linear right at the bottom part where segmental reflexes come higher. But each segment itself can function optimally. Then two segment, intersegmental and beyond, where brain comes, I think is there in this particular picture. And anyone who can make optimum use of the entire nervous system can be a superhuman being in tune with the divinity as such, and bring all the universe knowledge without any difficulty perfectly. Now come to the question, how did the autonomic nervous system develop? Brain, spinal cord and skin develop from the neural ectoderm. I have made it very clear there are three forms of ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm. Nervous system, skin, eyes, spinal cord, entire thing is developed from ectoderm. Then as the zygote is formed with the union of sperm and ovum put together, at the 26th day ectoderm thickens along the dorsal midline to form a neural plate. You are going to see this picture in the next. And neural plate invaginates and forms a groove flanked by a neural fold. You are going to see next. Neural groove fuses to form the neural tube and neural folds into neural crest. These are the three steps which take place, and the crest cells migrate and form the ganglia. They are center of the ectoderm. They are migrated from the central nervous system to the periphery to form autonomic ganglia as such. Now you can see in this particular picture, you see the upper picture, how zygote is formed, union of Jivatma, this sperm and ovum together. Then how after 8 days it gets implanted in uterus, and how further development takes place. And first thing is laminar formation, you can see on top. Ectoderm, mesoderm, other thing. Now you see the down, what happens in 19 days, what happens in 20 days, and what happens in 22 days, and what happens in 26 days. You can see this fold. From this neural crest migration, you can see the autonomic ganglia, both sympathetic and parasympathetic, which becomes effective government further on. And I am very glad my PhD work centered around Tantra, Tantra Vidya, Akhand Yoga, and it's centered around autonomic nervous system, endocrine system and chakras by and large, the deepest part of the human consciousness. I experienced that it is a wonder I am able to show something which is in Vedas, Upanishads as such. Now come to why do we call it sympathetic and parasympathetic? There is an ancient observation, whenever there is injury, it will lead to tachycardia, means increased heart rate. And tachycardia occurs to save the person from the effect of injury and blood loss. And that's what I say, sympathetic system is known for increased heart rate and also associated with maybe increased blood pressure, increased blood volume, whole activities increase. It's a dynamism which is brought together. But it is a sympathetic system, when there is a blood loss, it has to correct. And again I'm saying sympathetic system is along the blood vessels from top of the head to the soul, completely throughout. Sympathetic throughout the system. The observation of this tachycardia and sympathizing with the body has left to the formation of sympathetic nervous system, is trying to save you so that come what may, you should survive. And that's why sympathetic system is the most important last system which comes to play to save you come what may. And anyone who is a perfect sympathetic system and supported by a perfect parasympathetic system, perfect endocrine system, he is likely to be very, very healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. And this is what Tantra is all about. Then sporting both put together as such, work together in unison, that is autonomic nervous system. Now today I am going to talk about sympathetic, tomorrow about parasympathetic, and then put together as that in the next 3 days, because I feel this is most important for everyone to be very healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. Now the sensory pathway. The visceral afferent sensory pathway resembles the somatic afferent. Both sensory component for both motor and involuntary is identical, is through the sympathetic system itself. Now, how the pathway of the sensory pathway step from every part is carried. So, information which I make it with eyes open, skin, eyes, ears, smell, taste, everything should be understood with open awareness, nothing to be closed. That's it. Then you have a, as far as temperature and other things are not well defined in parasympathetic system, what you see in the sympathetic, what you see in the skin are the voluntary system much more. Inside is not so powerful, but it is not completely not there. There are very few, but they are there to tell you what is there and what is not to be there. That is something which I am making. And there is no proprioception in that, because that is associated only with the joints and muscles. In the joint where proprioception awareness comes up. Inside is little, not that precise and concise. Then come to the question of afferent system of the visceral reach the central nervous system via sympathetic and parasympathetic common. So, sensory input from sympathetic and parasympathetic along with the afferent system go together. So, in other words, sympathetic and parasympathetic, both sensory and motor together, they work inside as a component of integrating deeper in. I think that's the unique part, whereas in motor component, sensory is different, motor is different, but in autonomic, both go hand in hand. Now comes the question, parasympathetic viscera and different parts in the autonomic nervous system, they go to bring awareness what is wrong. Maybe that is the reason I keep saying, do not take non-vegetarian, do not take alcohol, do not take drugs, you do not take anything so that you creep, your sensations are stopped. When there is a pain, try to understand the pain, find the cause, and you rectify it much better than taking something which is a painkiller or tranquilizer or a drug or alcohol to put you in sensation, because all those things going to give you no awareness and can kill you in silence. So, I am, as an individual, I am following all what I am sharing, not sharing something which I am not doing. Now come to the question of the sensory pathway. The visceral sensation travel the same pathway as somatic system. In the spinothalamic tract, which I have said ascending and descending go in the same thing. That's it. Now come to the question, as far as autonomic nervous system, there is the lateral horn cells in spinal cord play an important role. You have the posterior thing for motor system, which is sensory, and the anterior horn for motor. But lateral horn have both sensory and motor component of involuntary nature, which centralize it. That's also reason what we have three thing is actually made into 7 parts. Now, this particular picture is very clear. They have a referred pains. You have a problem in the heart. That pain is reflected in the left arm or left finger simultaneously, and sweating and everything together will give you indication the sympathetic system is all to save you. But that's the time you go and seek treatment to not to die from heart attack. And once you are aware this is starting point and seek the intervention at the earliest, you will never die. Heart attack is not a problem, it's an indication, but you should take remedial action at the same time. The referred pain is also very important part of the inner system where heart and the pain comes up. Similarly, other organs also are represented outside to give you if this is what is there, and that is what Tantra Vidya is all about. Tantra Vidya gives you both inside and outside experiences. That is what is going to give the perfect diagnosis, cause and effect, and once you rated that with the food alone, and I can tell you from my experience, all the medicines which a modern medicine is giving can be done with herbs alone, provided we become aware and do things systematically. And as we grow older, you can be much better than when you compare to others. You even in 60s and 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s, you could be as efficient as 21 years in physical health, emotional, mental, and intellect, and by and large. And I'm just trying to prove to myself with a diet control and good lifestyle of Akhand Yoga, I can prove it that I am wonderful even in my 70s, 80s, 90s, even 100s. Now there comes the question of another first order neurons are in the dorsal. I make it clear. Sensory is the posterior part and motor in between. In between you have sensory and motor both autonomic together, and this is a picture very clearly on that part. Now there is a dual system, both goes hand in hand. Once they work together, only then you can be perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. If you have even one deficiency in any of the blocks, whether anatomical blocks, physiological blocks, biochemical or psychological, all the three things, anything can disturb. When it is disturbed, you could have a problem and could have issues. So make your physical body perfect for entire life, and that is the real yoga. Now this is a picture I had made it from my PhD work in 2001. This centers around autonomic nervous system. I am glad I have done that even in 2001 and made it very clear. Left and right chain put together at the bottom, they meet together in ganglion impar or coccygeal ganglion, and showed that particular sympathetic system is made with Divyank. There are 22 petals on one side and 22 other side, 44 plus union at the bottom, 45 thing, which arise from 28 nerves from spinal cord, and that is 45 by 28 is Divyank. And I'm not going to talk about autonomy, that system or parasympathetic. Let's stick only to this part, 28 leading to 45, and how beautiful divine design is there. And I want everybody to have that kind of precise, concise knowledge, not confused which is not mathematically correct. Now this is a picture of effective system in sympathetic and parasympathetic. In a motor component is acetylcholine alone, but in a sympathetic system, in preganglion you have acetylcholine, but postganglion you have noradrenaline or norepinephrine. There are two hormones take place in sympathetic system, and same thing is with adrenal gland again and also the blood vessels. But when it comes to the parasympathetic system, both preganglion and postganglion fiber is only acetylcholine, not of acetylcholine. That's why sympathetic system is very generalized, whereas parasympathetic is very localized. Preganglion fibers in sympathetic are short and post is longer, but in parasympathetic preganglion is shorter, longer, and postganglion is very short, or maybe the organ itself. But this is the kind of knowledge we should have precision, and this graphic presentation will give you. Sympathetic preganglion is short and parasympathetic preganglion is long, and sympathetic postganglion is long and parasympathetic is short or no one itself. I think that knowledge should be precise, concise, no confusion, and if I remember, then I know everybody can remember. And unless until we become our own doctors, nobody is going to help us. No doctor can help a person who cannot take care of himself, and that is something which I keep saying. Everyone got to become your doctor. Maybe that is the reason I am taking the consensus decision to present everything in the public free for everybody, so that you don't have to go to doctors and interfere. You can prevent the problems much better than getting it cured. Prevention is better than cure. You should never fall sick, so that you could be an asset to the world as such. Now comes the conclusion. Efferent and autonomic nerves comprise neural pre-ganglion and postganglion, which I told you. And what is long, what is short, I think is all something is conclusion, put it in this particular picture. Now come to the efferent things. For all practical purposes, autonomic nervous system is a generalized visceral efferent motor system. It can control smooth muscles, cardiac muscles and glands. Now I am making it very clear again. Motor system is with skeletal muscles, which are outside muscles which we can control and move. They don't move, so their reflex arch is independent. It's not as involuntary, as rapid, as spontaneous, and that comes only with autonomic nervous system. And they are smooth muscles and cardiac muscles, not skeletal muscles. But of course, skeletal muscles also play a sport to protect us from many of the accidents we could have, our problem could have, because motor also comes to the play role. So when these things are understood, I think then we understand the autonomic nervous system and sympathetic and parasympathetic very clearly. And anyone who wants to be perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and have perfect homeostasis, you got to have a perfect knowledge of autonomic nervous system. Now to come to the question of how the sympathetic system is developed. As I told you, preganglion fibers arise from lateral horn cells of thorax 1 to lumbar 2. That means 12 of thorax segment plus 2 of lumbar are 14 segments of the spinal cord, and there are 2 nerves from each segment, left and right. So there are 28 preganglion fibers or nerves which arise from 14 segments. Is the first thing which I am trying to make you understand. Spinal cord T1 to L2, 14 segments, 28 nerves is the first thing to be done. And these preganglion fibers are myelinated. Make it very clear. You have myelination like axons, what you have seen in the my thing. And they emerge out of spinal cord through the anterior horns. This again, although they arise from the lateral horns, but they come out along with the motor nerves from anterior root as a together as peripheral nerve, which is motor component. Both motor and involuntary are together, but originate from lateral horn. That's the reason I said lateral horn cells have made me sure there is a 10 lobes in the brain, and insular cortex is that component. Upper is insular cortex and down it is lateral horn cells, and all in the same form. And these white ramus communicate, they enter the corresponding sympathetic ganglion at the end at that particular, at both opposing and corresponding side together. So 28 are the preganglion fibers, lateral horn cells from T1 to L2. They myelinated, they emerge out as such. Then they go up and down as 2 chains. As I told you, Ida and Pingala nadis, which are on either side of the spinal cord, or Sushumna nadi, are the left and right chains of the sympathetic system. And both, which start from 14 or 28. If you say 14, it is 22 on either side, 44 plus they unite at the bottom to give it 45. Very interesting. And that is bottom, what we call ganglion implant, is what Muladhara chakra is. And once Kundalini sleeps in Muladhara chakra, you have a perfect balance of the sympathetic and parasympathetic put together. That's what Tantra has made me understand the concept much more clearly than the medical science. They're going together of Tantra, Tantra Vidya and medical science put together has made me a better, healthy, wealthy, wise human being. Now, this is what it is. Now, comes to the question. Now, you have 45 ganglion of the sympathetic system, 14 segments, 28 nerves and 45 ganglia. It's fantastic thing. When we talk of the 14, again we talk of 7 plus 7, 14. And all the life imprisonment is 14 years. This way the divine of 7, 14, 21 and also the 22 makes very clear. You can see the 22 on either side is what is Divyank is all about. Amazing. As grey, then now that was the grey white fibers, myelinated. Now these fibers are gray matter, unmyelinated. They go further to appear on to the organ which they come through the gray communicants, enter the spinal cord and follow the course accompanying some blood vessel to reach. And I tell you, sympathetic system goes along with the blood vessel throughout the body. The first thing in emergency, it is the sympathetic system which tries to stop the bleeding through vasoconstriction. Again, most important, you have an injury, blood vessel is damaged, immediate the first thing to stop is the sympathetic overactivity or vasoconstriction, and that is important even for clot formation thereafter. Then dual effect goes on and how further. As I told you, hormones which are required is there. As I told you, in sympathetic system, acetylcholine and nicotine both are adrenaline come to play important role. Now in this particular picture, I have represented the same thing very clearly. You can see the spinal cord bottom, T1 to L2, 14 nerves on either side, and then you see 22 on this side, 22 on that side, and ganglion empire right at the bottom. This is what sympathetic system is all about, and that is Divyank by and large. And you can see this representation very clearly in this particular form. And what are the different organs that separate? Now all the organs, parasympathetic is well within the chest and thoracic region, but sympathetic is all out, and it has effect on everything, and you're going to see those important parts which play a very important role to protect us from all the deficiencies, also give us the idea of an external world, internal world, and we could be very conscious. And that's the reason I say no alcohol, no drugs, no painkillers, no blocking. Only then you will know it, and body will tell you what to do, and that's it. Now first thing, sympathetic system, when it is on, your iris will become dilated. You can see the light much more, and that once person you know that is sympathetic system on, that you need to take care of not going beyond, and that could be because the sugar is less or sodium is less, water is less, or things. So homeostasis is going to be a very important part. When sympathetic is disturbed, its homeostasis is disturbed, as a result you have. And I do know, when I experience that, mean this is the cause, and what is to be done, I immediately know whether water is less, or sugar is less, or salt is less, or this is less. That's why all the glucose normal saline which is given, we can experience, and we can take orally itself and bring the sympathetic system to the normal stage. Parasympathetic will constrict it, and sympathetic will dilate, and this is what it is occurring. Now come to the digestive system. When sympathetic is on, digestion will not be there. That means parasympathetic helps in rest, digest, and conserve energy, but sympathetic will reduce it because it is going to mobilize otherwise. This is one of the two things. I think that's also very important part to understand Tantra and see how it can help us to be a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise, and happy system. So we have seen in the eyes, we have seen in the digestion as such. And third thumb comes to the heart rate. And as I told you, 10 things of heart system is very clear. From SA node to the last with the heart is 10 stages. And these 10 stages also control in sympathetic. Normally you can have a heart rate of 72. But when this is cut, heart rate could go up. And depending on where the block is there in the conducting system, rate would start coming down. And once that is understood, that you know very well whether your heart rate is low, that means sympathetic system is not working. So you need to make sure that that's the reason, as a medical doctor, even in Madras Medical College, if there is a low, do you need aconite or give adrenaline injections or chloramine injections, has been the thing from my young days itself. And I think once we know what to take and what not to take, what kind of food is to taken. Once you understand that, then you are perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. And I think this is more than enough as an introduction to sympathetic system, how this sympathetic system is the responsible psychosomatic disorders. I make it very clear. All the psychosomatic disorders are primarily centered on sympathetic system only, whether excitation or this. If it is too much, excitation. If it's too little, it's inhibition. But perfectly being aware 24/7 and sleep properly, do the same, when autonomics work together, only then you can be healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. And that's why this system is very, very important. And my entire Akhand Yoga and Tantra Yoga centers only on autonomic nervous system. So having understood the sympathetic, we will go to parasympathetic tomorrow. And this is what it is all about. I think enough for the day. Thank you very much.